Okay, single malt whiskey in Korea. Okay, why?
Single malt whiskey in Korea.
Korea is known for soju, the strong distilled drink, or makgeolli, the rice wine. Paired with the local spicy cuisine, these complete a night of wining and dining in Korea. But now there is another option, a single malt whiskey born and bred right here in Korea, Kiwon. Our globalist today is Bryan Do, the founder and CEO of its distiller, 쓰리소사이어티스. Bryan is here to talk about the global market for this latest Korean export and how he is out to capture your taste buds.
한국 최초 싱글몰트위스키라는 점 때문에 아침 일찍 왔습니다. 30시간 넘게 기다려서 첫 바트를 구매했는데 일찍 와서 기다린 보람이 있는 것 같습니다.
이제 목요일 밤 11시부터 와서 대기하고 있었습니다. 제가 느꼈을 때는 약간 전통주 같은 느낌도 살짝 들었고
평소에 느껴보지 못한 맛을 느껴갖고 되게 신기한 경험이었어요.
Welcome, Bryan, to the Globalist.
Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
Welcome home in some ways, but we'll talk about that later. So, congratulations are in order. You just released Kiwon.
Thank you.
So, what's the reaction been like?
The reaction has been phenomenal. We're really taken aback by it. To be honest, our Scottish master distiller was really almost in tears because he was so just taken aback by the fans in Korea for single malt whiskey and how long they waited to get the whiskey. We launched it on Saturday morning, and there were people that were camping outside since Thursday. And our distillery is very cold. It was -6 degrees. So I was very worried about people possibly getting hypothermia or sick. We had to open up one of our actually aging warehouses that we had just built so people can go inside and stay warm. But because he was so taken aback by that sight, he said, Bryan, you know, I realize how much more work I have to do and make sure that we are producing world-class whiskey from Korea.
What was that about? Why were people waiting for days for your whiskey?
The reason why they waited so long was because this is Korea's first single malt whiskey. This is our first flagship batch now that's going to be regular. On the box it says batch 1. On top of that, it was our cask strength edition, which means it is 57%. So it's exactly what is in the cask or the barrels, and we put it into the bottles. We don't dilute it at all with water. So it was a very limited amount that we launched that day. It was 150 bottles. Because of that, those are all numbered and signed by us, 1 through 150. So it was very, very limited. And
so they wanted to be in the 150 that got that collection.
Exactly. A lot of those fans were the people that had our progression series before, and they wanted to make sure that they got whatever to up to 150 of our first batch.
And after they had a little taste, what was the reaction?
They were very shocked because it was so flavorful and it was actually complex for such a young age whiskey that they were comparing it to other much, much older whiskeys. And I think the consensus is that we have a winner on our hands.
Oh. We are very excited about this launch, but let's go back to 2020 and you starting this business. Okay, single malt whiskey in Korea. Okay, why?
Single malt whiskey in Korea has not been done before. If I can go back to the whiskey history of Korea, before the Olympics, the government decided
We're talking 1988.
foreign guests that come should also have whiskey. So they started to give out whiskey licenses. However, no one company actually made the whiskey fully in Korea. The market wasn't ready for it. I think it was much too young and early for that. So skip forward to 30 years almost, and it was me sitting in airports, and I was going around a lot these days to promote my previous company that I had. I used
Which
to have
is
a
the craft beer
beer company. And whenever I went to see other craft brewers or if I went to go see other friends, it would be difficult to just bring a bottle of beer because it could be consumed so easily, even though it's Korean. But I'd like to also bring something else, and I usually brought single malt whiskey to them. And it hit me one day is, why does Korea not have single malt whiskey? There are other Asian giants that have single malt whiskey and have a deep history with it. So I did a little bit of research, and I think there were a couple things now that spurred me to thinking, oh, I think I can do this. Number one, because I have a background in craft brewing, half of the production for single malt whiskey is almost exactly like making beer. All you're doing is pretty much distilling the beer. I knew most of that. I don't think there was anybody else in Korea that would be willing to take this risk and jump to do it. So I said, why not? Let's try to make this whiskey in Korea.
So you talk about Kiwon, which means new and hope, or beginning and hope.
Yes.
Yes, which is, I guess, where your heart is at the moment.
Of course.
You have a lot of hope in your heart as you
We
begin.
do.
But you talk about also the unique flavor
Yes.
of this whiskey. What is the unique flavor of Kiwon?
So when we were conceptualizing Kiwon at the very beginning, Andrew and I, our master distiller, sat down for a long time thinking, okay, we have to make a unique flavor for this because we have the pleasure and we also have the burden of being the first single malt whiskey from Korea. So it should have something unique to Korea. So we were thinking, what can make this unique to Korea? And we were sitting down one day and we had a lot of different ideas going around, and we sat near this, in Korean it's called a 백반집. So it's just your normal run-of-the-mill cafeteria that you would go to. And we were eating there one day for lunch, and of course the side dishes come out first and waiting for the main dish. The main dish came out and it was a spicy stir-fried pork.
Okay.
So it's 제육
제육.
볶음. And we both looked at each other. We looked down and we looked, and that was our aha moment. And we said, oh, this is it. Koreans love spicy food, but Korean spicy is not just the heat spicy. Korean spicy has a lot of sweetness to it that you'll find in gochujang, and gochujang you can find everywhere in the world nowadays in packets.
True.
And so we know that gochujang is very popular everywhere, also kimchi. So I think Korean food is also, there's a big component is the spice to it.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, we have to have spice. So the main dish is going to be spicy, but the side dishes are going to support our main flavor, which is going to be spicy. So we made sure that we have a lot of sweetness around it. We have some citrus around it. Personally, I like citrusy drinks. And I also want to target the single malt whiskey to another demographic. So we said, okay, this is perfect. We're going to have the spiciness, a Korean spiciness as the main flavor, but also it will be surrounded and supported by different flavors like Korea has in panchans and side dishes all over. I think it's a perfect story to tell for our single malt whiskey.
Yeah. So you started on that concept, that creation. Did it come out the way you thought it was going to come out?
At first it didn't, but that's why I pay the big dollars to the people that have much more experience than me. So he was able to craft something that came out to the way that we liked it. We toyed around with the fermentation time. We toyed around with the degree that we distill. There was a lot of in-house secrets that we can't share, but we had to tweak a lot of things to make it taste the way, and it really does taste spicy coming off right off of the still. However, that spiciness, once it sits in the barrel for a while, calms down, and after you drink it, you can feel it in the finish.
You talk about the four seasons.
Yes.
And why you thought that was the perfect situation, natural environment, habitat in order to make single malt whiskey. Explain that to us,
Yes.
please.
When I had brought on our Scottish master distiller, he, of course, had 40 years of experience under his belt, and we toured all around Korea. We went to Jeju-do, we went to Busan, went to Gwangju, went all the way up to Paju, and the biggest thing we were looking for was the climate. Does the climate have a huge fluctuation, whereas it's going to help mature the whiskey? So we chose Namyangju, 40 minutes north of Seoul, because it had exactly what we were looking for. And we found a hill being on the north side of the hill. It's very cold in the winter. It's almost average negative 25 in the winter. Our distillery doesn't see the sun for almost a month and a half in the winter. In the summer, it is hot. It is hot and humid. So what that does is the casks are one of the most important parts of making single malt whiskey. The casks are exactly like our skin.
The oak casks.
The oak casks. In the summer, the casks open up to allow more breathing. And when it opens up, it acts like an accordion and it sucks in a lot of the spirit that's inside the barrels. And in the winter, it gets really cold. So it crunches in and it kind of spits it back out.
Okay.
When it does that, it sucks in and it filters and it spits out. And when it does that, it takes the characters from the barrel, from the wood that's inside, and it does that several times a year. Compared to Scotland, where it's always cold. That means the cask has just about a little bit of room to play, and it's usually in the contracted stage. Or if it's in much warmer climates, it's always expanded. So the place that we chose was almost the perfect place to do it. It doesn't have to be as extreme as ours, but in order to age it a little bit faster, we thought it would be good.
I guess the final test is, does your 3-year meet the standards of 7 or how many years you think a good whiskey needs to mature?
Yes, in industry term, it's called NAS, which is non-age statements. There are a lot more non-age statement whiskeys that are coming out now. It doesn't have to say 8, 10, 12, 18 on the bottle. Because there are new technologies, there's better ways to mature the whiskey. We just found a very economical, because Mother Nature does it for us, and found a very good way to do it. Now, you don't have to take our word for it, because I could be biased. However,
Maybe.
however, we had sent our 1 year and our 1.5 year whiskeys to 2 of probably the most prestigious whiskey competitions in the world. The first one is the IWSC, and the second one is the San Francisco Wine and Spirit competition. These 2 are considered the top. So we actually sent our whiskeys to get feedback from world-class judges. The judges also give back feedback so we can either tweak or do something with our whiskeys. And that's what we were waiting for, is this precious feedback. However, we got awards instead,
Oh, yeah.
and we were quite shocked.
Tell us about the awards.
So our 1-year whiskey got a bronze at the IWSC, which I think is unheard of.
For a
And-
1-year-old.
For a 1-year-old. And our even more shocking was our 1.5-year got a gold at San Francisco, and that was competing against 8 years and 10-year whiskeys. And our master distiller, Andrew Shand, he's done judging in competitions all over the world in his 40 years in the industry. And he says it's fairly rare for a whiskey to get a gold that's under 3 years. And he said it's almost unheard of for a whiskey to get a gold that's under 2 years. So we were quite shocked. We knew ourselves that it was good whiskey, but again, we had a bias.
Yeah.
But once we had the mark of approval from world-class judges, I think that gave us the confidence to be able to launch our whiskey into the world.
Yeah. And I hear the first launch is going to 5 countries?
Currently, we're being sold in 5 countries. It is the U.S., Singapore, Taiwan,
Hong Kong.
and Japan.
Yeah.
And in the middle of this year, starting from July, we'll also be in Europe.
Going to whiskey country?
We are going to whiskey country. So we are re-exporting it back into whiskey country. So we're very happy about that. So once it hits our friends in Scotland, we're dying for them to try our whiskey.
Yeah. Happy or,
We're a little nervous, but I think the reception we've gotten so far, I'm quite confident that they'll like our whiskey.
The other aspect is that, Asian whiskeys are making a big comeback. We've seen from Taiwan, China, and of course Japan for a long time. How is Korean single malt going to compare with that Asian flavor that people are seeking?
I hope that we can be as good as the other whiskey countries currently right now. We are following in their footsteps. Japan has over 100 years of experience in distilling, and Taiwan has almost a decade ahead of us, more than a decade ahead of us. So those are our bigger brothers that we have to try to follow. But hopefully we're satisfied and we're happy with this batch, and we can bring up the ranks and more people can enjoy other Asian single malt whiskeys.
The other side of your business is that the difficulty you're having in Korea.
Yes.
I'm going to give you the platform. Vent.
Wow, if I can really, no. A lot of people called me crazy. A lot of pundits said, you can't do it in Korea, all because of the taxes and regulations, not because of weather or other aspects. It's
because you're not getting the tax breaks.
We're not getting the regulatory help that we need. Actually, we are one of the only brackets that is still stuck in the 90s that hasn't changed.
Is that because you're considered a luxury item, or?
Because we are a luxury and premium item, and although we are made in Korea, it's not like the Korean traditional liquors like your sojus and cheongjus and makgeollis. So they have a much bigger tax incentive than we do. And we're hoping that we can fight the government and the tax offices to bring this down, because I think we've been able to prove that Korea can be a really, really great place to make whiskey. I would be surprised in 20 years if Korea is not one of the top whiskey makers in the world. If the Korean government would get wise to the regulations and the taxes that are stifling the industry currently right now. Hopefully, we'll be able to change that. There have been already government officials that have come and spoken to us about how it would be wise to change the taxes.
And with the growth of other whiskey companies into the market?
Yes. As they say in the US, it takes a big tide to raise all the boats. So we need other whiskey companies to come and help and put more pressure onto the government to change these outdated laws and taxes.
The cavalry is on its way.
They are on the way. There is some major conglomerates, 2 that have already, Lotte and Shinsegae, that have already announced they're making single malt whiskey. So the cavalry is on the way. We just hope they come a little quicker.
This is a land of the quick and quick. So,
Yes. Very true.
Hello, Quiz Champion fans. I'm To Jung Han.
I'm Do Han. Do Han, 아리랑TV.
Let's talk about you. Transparency, your family. So you were an anchor at CNN.
No, anchor at Arirang.
Sorry, Arirang. CNN, because before Arirang,
Yes.
you worked with me
Yes,
at CNN.
yes,
So family all around. But then you went corporate,
yes.
did Microsoft, left Microsoft, went into craft beer.
Yes,
Everyone was really like freaking out about that. Did very well.
yes,
Sold to a global beer company,
yes.
and then dived into whiskey.
Yeah.
You have to explain.
Yes, I mean, this is surreal for me, being here, being interviewed by you, because I used to be your runner.
Yeah, you used to carry around the camera.
Yeah, and the tripods for everybody. So I was your runner for, I think, 6 months when we were in the Kyobo building.
Yes.
In the late 90s. And then I worked at Arirang. I've all the way from quiz champion to being an anchor to producing news. So this is very familiar, and I do feel like family here. And when I was working in the corporate world, I had a passion to do something of my own business. My father always used to tell me, "Why are you making the richest man in the world richer? Go out and make yourself rich." Microsoft is a great company, and most parents would be, wow. But my father is a strange person where he,
Well, he had great confidence in you.
maybe he did, maybe he saw something that I didn't see back then, but I wasn't a huge risk taker, but I had this passion for craft beer then. And I also saw the market, and I said, I think if we made good craft beer and were able to give Koreans some quality beer to taste at a fairly affordable price, I would be very happy to do that. So I don't know why I had this self-confidence in myself to make craft beer, but I did, and I hung up my suit, and I grabbed my overalls and work clothes and work boots and started a craft beer company. It went well for 4 years, and eventually Anheuser-Busch caught on, and we sold to Anheuser-Busch, which is the largest beer company in the world. Very lucky. That was about the time where I said, when I was traveling around and noticed there was no Korean single malt whiskey to give to my friends.
But it's not just single malt. We don't yet have wine either.
Yes, so I've been approached by investors asking, Bryan, do you want to do the trifecta and make a Korean wine? And there are some Korean wines in Korea. I think the terroir in Korea is not right to make good wine. I've done a lot of research around this, actually. I think the only good wine that could come out of Korea possibly is some sweet wine. And I spoke to a lot of experts in this field. If we do anything, then it could be in that field, but I'm gonna first to see how this venture goes first.
Okay.
And
So the trifecta is sort of not in the immediate future.
yes,
So what is in your immediate future? What is the next milestone for you?
I think the next milestone for me is to watch my daughter grow.
How old is she, by the way?
My daughter is 6 years old, and it is the perfect time to watch her grow and to have an influence in her growth. That's number one. But number two, in terms of professionalism and what we've started, I'd like to see our Kiwon whiskey become known in the world stage and also be recognized in the world stage. So I'd have to bring more of our product globally. And another impetus for that is because the taxes are so high in Korea, and if we export, it's no taxes.
Yep.
We are allocating more, unfortunately, to be exported abroad. And fortunately, there are a lot of countries that want something that is Korean, and they're very interested in what a Korean single malt whiskey is. So hopefully we can do that, and maybe many years down the road, we can become a public company and bring this to even greater heights.
We look forward to seeing and tasting when that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's it for me. Next week, I'll be back with another globalist who's putting Korea on the map. Sun Jie out.